Alchemize your energy. Darling, let your spirit be free. Don't give up, keep on pushing through. Now is the time, it's all up to you. Alchemize your energy, my friend. Let your spirit be free. Don't give up, keep on pushing through. Now is the time, it's all up to you. No matter the storm, but over tragedy. No matter the storm, but over tragedy. No matter the storm, we will always take flight. Keep on pushing through the darkness of night. There's no limit, let's reach for the sky. Shine so bright, from darkness to light.
Shalom, shalom. Okay, let me get everything set. What's going on, Ambassador?
My big brother, how you feeling?
Oh man, I'm great. I'm great. How's everything going on over there in the land?
Well, I mean, it's challenging, but it's an opportunity for us to continue to maintain our alignment and to show, that although we walk through the valley of the shadow of death, we fear no evil. So everything that's taking place around us, we stay focused and stay aligned with the purpose that we have for being back in the land. So although there's a lot happening right now still, we maintain our alignment. So we're good.
Absolutely. Oh, so you'll know DJ Genesis if you can hear me. Yes. I sent I think 50 pictures. So if you look above in your inbox, you'll see the pictures. But first and foremost, giving all praise and honor to Yahweh, the supreme, intelligent, powerful one of our forefathers, Abraham, Yitzchak, and Yaakov. They were striving for righteousness' sake. I say into the family, Shalom Aleichem. We on alchemizing energy from darkness to light. DJ Genesis Detroit show. It's definitely an honor to have you here. We have Ambassador Ashriel Ben Yisra'EL, national spokesman of the African Hebrew Israelites of Jerusalem, stationed in Dimona, Israel, and other pockets throughout Israel and throughout the jurisdiction slash we used to call them what we used to call them before jurisdiction extensions. Jurisdiction slash all throughout Africa. It's an honor to have you here. I don't even know where to start at, but I do want to start just who you are. Who is Ambassador Ashriel? Your origins, your beginnings in the kingdom. Just give us a brief synopsis on that, and then we can move forward.
Well, first of all, let me give all honor and praises and thanks to the God of our fathers, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, and also the God of our fathers in this dispensation of time, my father, Sar Bakuria, Minister Bakuria, and our spiritual leader and teacher and God, Ben Ami Ben Israel, and one of my mentors, the greatest men that I have known in my lifetime, Prince Ashriel Ben Israel, and all of those who've been striving, for righteousness and for providing an alternative life to what we see and what we experience all around the world today. So I was born and raised in the community here in Dimona, Israel, because my parents repatriated back to our ancestral homeland in the 1960s. My father was actually one of the pioneers who had come out of America in 1967 en route back to the Promised Land, going through Liberia for 2.5 years and then coming to Israel in 1969. So I was born and raised here in the community when everything had already been established. And I am the youngest child of 15 siblings. And, I like to just say very simply and very direct that I'm just a servant to my people and a mouthpiece for our people here in the land to be able to help our people worldwide to be able to conceptualize our journey and to be able to understand our plight and to also understand our responsibility as being those who are the vanguard of our people returning back to our land after 400 years of slavery and 2,000 years of exile. And so I'm just one of those ones who's allowing the Spirit to use me in service to our people to be able to help them to understand what it is and who we are and why did we come back home and what is our purpose now that we are back home.
Absolutely, absolutely. So, a brief synopsis, give us a geopolitical understanding as well as a spiritual understanding as to why we left from the confounds of the United States, mainly in the Chicago, Detroit area. We had little small pockets in New York and Philadelphia, but the bulk of us that made that first repatriating exodus in 1967 was from Chicago, Detroit area. Could you give us a brief geopolitical and spiritual synopsis why we made that move and what was the purpose?
See, we have to go back, first of all, Mighty Hebrew, to understand how do we arrive to America in the first place. Because most people start the history of our people in America as if we just haphazardly woke up one day and we were in America. But that didn't happen like that. There was a process that took us from our ancestral homeland here in northeastern Africa and Israel through the northern part of Africa and then over to the western part of Africa. So this was a 2,000-year period. We can go back to the 70 AD after the destruction of the Second Temple and the destruction of Jerusalem by the Romans that caused us to be misplaced or displaced from this land. And throughout that period of time, from there, we were also chased out by the Arabs, by the when they began their conquest of North Africa, of Central Africa. Can you still hear me?
You went out just a little bit. The last part we heard you say you was talking about 70 CE or AD when the Romans exiled us from out of the land, and then it messed up a little bit. I think you started getting into the Arab. Go back.
Right. So we remember that we had then the Arab conquest about 3 years after the Prophet Muhammad had passed on in 632 AD or CE. And then in 635 CE, that's when the Muhammadans actually started their conquest in North Africa that caused us then to be driven out of that area. And we did find refuge on the west coast of Africa. And so we, up until the Portuguese arrived, we did find refuge in different pockets on the Western African coast. So we had brothers and sisters who found refuge in Nigeria, and we had those who found refuge in Ghana and in Benin, and then in Liberia, and until the Portuguese began trading with the locals, that actually caused us to be some of those ones who were given over to the Portuguese in exchange for those materials that they were receiving from the Europeans. And so from that point, they began what was called the transatlantic slave trade that took us, first of all, into Europe and then into North Africa, into Central Africa, North America, into Central America, into South America, into the Caribbeans. And so our brothers and sisters who had arrived there and were enslaved for a long period of time, they were forced to disconnect from their culture, from their traditions, from their mores, from their folkways. They lost their language, they lost their names, they lost their identity as a people, and then they were forced on to take another person's or another people's identity as Christians with the Christian European names, with their habits, with their Sunday service, and all of those things that had turned us from who we were as Israelites into just a pocket of what they called Black people or African Americans, colored people. But we had a clear identity, we had a purpose, we had a calling, but also that wasn't something that happened either just haphazardly, because when we do look into the scriptures, we see that these things have been laid out for us even before it actually took place. I mean, it does say in Deuteronomy, the 28th chapter, the 68th verse, that we'll be taken into Egypt again, but this time we'll be taken into Egypt by ships. It also does say in Genesis, the 15th chapter, the 13th verse, that Abraham should know of a surety that his seed will be a stranger in the land that is not theirs, and they will afflict them for 400 years. And it also does speak about the fact that after we had experienced that bondage, then we will return to our ancestral homeland, the remnants of Judah, the remnants of Israel who have been displaced from our home. And so when we did arrive to America, you can look throughout the centuries when we were singing there, about over the river Jordan. We were speaking about Jerusalem. We were speaking about Canaan's land. We were speaking about, that band of angels coming after us, coming forth to carry us back home. We were speaking about Jericho. We were speaking about these things. So we remembered that that memory of ours, that oral tradition, that culture that was passed on from generation to generation, it remained with us. So we never actually lost it, although we didn't have the ability to be able to maintain who we were. And then reading from the Bible was actually punishable by death. And so that wasn't, for us, anything that we were prepared to do. And that the slave masters, they had their own agenda, and so they did try and navigate us away from who we were. But it also says in Psalms 83 that they would seek to cut us off from being a nation, that the name of Israel will be no longer in remembrance. So all of these things happened, and they unfolded according to the prophecies. And also geopolitically, we see how all of these things were happening perfectly in alignment with what the scriptures were talking about. But then at one point or another, it was time also to return home. We weren't to be perpetual slaves, just like they say in that theory, the Hamitic curse that says that we are expected to be perpetual slaves from generation to generation to Shem and to Japheth and to Japheth. That's total and utter nonsense. But the Europeans had to do it to be able to justify what they were doing to us. So they broke us down, mighty Hebrew, so low and so bad to a point where we didn't even know who we were anymore. They created a Negro, they created a nigger, they created a colored person, they created just a black person. But then when it was time, when the Spirit started moving in our brothers and sisters, in the Rabbi Fords and the Rabbi Matthews and the brothers in the Church of God in Christ and the holiness, that it realized that, okay, well, we are not who they say we are. We're reading this book, and it sounds a lot like, our experience. It seems a lot like they're talking about us, and you look at it and it's just, the parallels are just too perfect. So at one point or another, we would have to, first of all, reconnect to our actual identity as Israelites. We would have to once again accept our culture as Africans, as Hebrews, as Israelites. We would have to once again understand that our ancestral home is not America, but our ancestral home is Israel as Israelites. And so at one point or another, comes a time where you have to get up and you have to make that move. You have to be bold enough to be able to understand it. Where you are is not where you want to be, and you become then the master of your own destiny. And so that's what our ancestors did. That's what our pioneers did. They became masters of their own destiny, and they built it in such a way where it was according to God's plan, slowly but surely, methodically following providence. And let me lay out the providence, how it actually happened in that way. You see, in 1948, 1947, right, when they were speaking about the establishment of the state of Israel, 1948, there was a war. There was a war here in Israel that had broken out once the state of Israel was actually announced. Right, once they announced that this was in November of 1947. Now, when the war began, the brother who was actually put in place to negotiate the ceasefire, he was an African-American brother, possibly an Israelite. His name was Dr. Ralph Bunche. He was the one who had negotiated the ceasefire deal that established the state of Israel. Now, the establishment of the state of Israel came after years of us not really looking at Israel as an actual geographical location. Because for a long period of time, we sang about it, we talked about it, by the rivers of Babylon, where we sat down and there we wept, and we remember Zion. We remembered Zion. But we didn't actually see Israel as an actual geographical location. But when the state of Israel was actually established in 1948, then Israel became a real live location for us. This is what our leader, teacher, and God Ben Ami taught us, that it was by providence that the state of Israel was established in order to be able to turn our eyes once again to our home. And then after that home was actually established, then the Spirit was able to begin moving in the midst of our people in America just 18 years after Israel had been established. And so there were some things that were happening during the civil rights period in America that it caused us to realize that it doesn't matter what we do, America would never accept us as part and parcel of their society, because we weren't brought there to be part and parcel of their society. So they looked at us as 3/5 of a human being forever and ever. And so it was something that had to happen to be able to allow us to once again start looking outwardly, looking for an external solution. And the external solution would come in the manner of the establishment of the state of Israel. Then in 1967, in 1966, the vision came to our leader, teacher, and guide, Ben Ami, and he had begun to organize so that we can be able to leave out of America. And in 1967, the first group left America en route back to the promised land, going through Liberia that had been established in 1802 as an outpost for those African Americans who would like to return and repatriate back to the promised land. Now, we left America going through Liberia because it was already established there. And it was written that we would go into the wilderness to purify ourselves once again before returning back to the Holy Land, because we couldn't bring all of those things that we had learned during our 400 years of slavery in America into the promised land. So we have to, first of all, purify ourselves and prepare ourselves before entering into this holy abode. And so that's what we did while we were in Liberia. Now, the incredible thing about it is that when we began to move out of America, something else had happened in Israel again. That was the 6-Day War in June of 1967. Now, we left America in 1967. Then you have the 6-Day War happening in Israel simultaneously in 1967. The 6-Day War, one of the most important things that happened during the 6-Day War was that Jerusalem once again was reunited. See, when you go back and you look at the uniting of Jerusalem for the purpose of it being our capital under King David, a few years down the line, when Jerusalem was separated and it wasn't united as that spiritual location for us once again, we couldn't, as Israelites, return to our ancestral land, to the homeland, to the spiritual center of the world when Jerusalem is separated politically. So the reuniting of Jerusalem in 1967, while we're leaving out of America, en route to the promised land through Liberia, had to be something that takes place before we could enter the land once again. In 1968, April 3rd, when Dr. Martin Luther King was given his last sermon, his final sermon in Memphis, Tennessee, he said that night that it really doesn't matter, what happens now. We have some difficult days ahead. He said, but it doesn't matter with me now, because I've seen the promised land. He said, but I may not get there with you. So you'd already seen what was going to take place. He said, but we as a people will get to the promised land. He said, so I'm happy tonight. I'm not weary about anything. I'm not fearing any man. Mine eyes have seen the coming. Mine eyes have seen the glory of the coming of the Lord. In May of 1968, the first group of African-American Hebrew Israelites landed once again in the promised land after 400 years of slavery and 2,000 years of exile out of this land. All of these things were not happening by happenstance. This was providential move after move after move, setting the way to be able to allow us that opportunity to be able to escape. Remember, even in America in the 1960s, 1967, 1968, what was taking place there was also a smokescreen that would allow us to be able to have such a significant amount of African Americans escaping America, in light of that smokescreen. What would you have happening at that time? You have the great riots that were taking place all over America at that point. Then you
That's
had
right.
the day that that they say literally that the earth stood still. You had such a bad snowstorm in Chicago that everybody was focusing on those things. And while everybody was focusing on the mundane things, we were focusing on the spiritual aspect of how these things are panning out to be able to allow us to make our great escape, to make our prison break out of the maximum prison that America is and has been to our people. And so coming back home and establishing a community here in Israel is nothing less than a miracle for our people, because we realize that our people are stuck almost in America. Can't leave almost. Most of our people don't have passports, not looking at anything outside of America, don't have the capacity to be able to leave because they're stuck in this consumerist society. But we managed to escape that and to come to Israel and to establish for ourselves the kind of society that is based on good, God, and truth, that is based on principles of love, of peace, of justice, of equality, of family. All of these things, having prayer, having familyhood at the center of what it is that we're doing in the village of peace, being that light that when you read in Isaiah and Jeremiah, it says that they will go up to the mountain of the Lord and they would ask to the house of Jacob, and they would ask that you teach us of your ways and we'll walk in that. When they say that the law should go forth from Jerusalem and the word of God from Zion, somebody had to be here to be able to actually actualize that, because God doesn't work, just in mysterious ways like they say. He worked through people. He worked through people, and we were those people that accepted the mantle to be the ones that are going to be the foregoers. And that's what we've done up until now. So since 1968 up until 2024, we've been laying that foundation to be able to give hope to our people that we can take our own destiny in our own hands and create for ourselves what we may. What did Marcus Garvey say? Up, you mighty people, will what you may. Well, that's what we did. And we're living in it until this very day. So I know it was expensive, but I had to lay down that foundation for the conversation so that we can be able to understand that this is not just, a few Black people that just got up and left America looking for something in Israel and just arrived here. No, these things happen by providence. It was laid out. It was a plan, and we followed that plan to the T.
Absolutely, absolutely, Ambassador. Speaking of 1966, this is when Adonai Rabbe knew he received the vision from the angel Gabriel, the 45-second vision to leave. We see, 67. We go 20 miles outside of Monrovia, Liberia. We're there for a 2.5 year period to break the negatudes that's outlined in the book of Ezekiel, being in the wilderness of the peoples. Now, I want to fast forward just a little bit, let's say roughly around 1971. Now, we know that there was an influx of Hebrews coming from the United States. And originally, the Aliyah law, or the law of return, when you believed in your heart that you was a Jew by heart, you can return to the land. But when the Israeli government, they seen the influx of Israelites coming into the land, they changed that law. Now I know the answer to that, but I want you to elaborate to the people. What were them changes, and what were the effects, and what was the geopolitical responses to that, so to say?
In 1950, 2 years after the state had been established, they had legislated the law of return. And the law of return said that anybody who had any affinity or believed in their hearts to be part of the house of Israel, you are welcomed to return to this land, because this was the reason why a land or a state was actually established. Now, prior to that, in the 1940s and the 1930s, the slogan for all Jews in the world, as they say, was Aliyah Chofshit LaMedina Ha'ivrit in Hebrew, which means free Aliyah to the Hebrew state. And so anybody who saw themselves as part of that Hebrew people was welcomed with open arms to come home. Well, we took advantage of it. And so in 1968, when the first members arrived to Israel, and in 1969, they had never encountered people of our skin color, of our hue, that are saying that they're from the house of Israel. Remember, even those people who had initially came in the first 5 aliyot from 1881 all the way up until the aliyah that was right before we had come to Israel, they were mostly Europeans. You had a bit of North African Jews. You had a bit of Arab Jews from the Arab countries, from the Arab states. You had a bit of those Jews who consider themselves Sephardic Jews, who they say that they were part of those who had escaped the Inquisition in 1492 over in Spain. And so they felt like they were, they second-class citizens here. They weren't really allowed, access to a lot of institutions or whatever. And they were, partially, the second-class people coming to Israel, to a state that was established by European peoples. And so they had never seen anybody who looked like us. So when we arrived to the gates of Ben Gurion and said, yes, sir, yes, ma'am, we are those Israelites who are returning to our homeland in order to establish the long-awaited kingdom of God, they didn't know how to deal with that. Initially, it was like, what? And then it was like, well, if you say so, okay, no problem. But then there were more groups that continued to come. And then it became a problem for them, because they never imagined in their heart of hearts that they would see some Black people coming from America, coming from Liberia, coming from other places in the world, claiming to be part of the house of Israel, because they didn't establish that for us. They wanted Israel to be an outpost for Europeans, to allow them the ability to continue to live their lives right here, just like they were living them in Europe. This is what, all of the fathers of Zionism said, that we just wanted this to be an extension of Europe. That's what Herzl said. That's what Bartishetsky said. That's what Jabotinsky said. This is what they said. They just wanted to have, an outpost. They just wanted to have a place where they can call home, that they could feel safe from the persecution they were experiencing in Europe. So when we came, we had utterly burst that bubble that they had in regards to the identity of the Israelites. And so they let it go on for a little time until they enacted a new law of return in 1970. Now, in the 1970 law of return, they said, well, who is a Jew? We have to give this a definition. And they said that the definition is one who has converted, or one who was born to a Jewish mother, first of all, or one who has converted and is not connected to any other religions. Now, obviously, we don't fit into that description, because we know that the house of Israel is patriarchal. So we're following the lineage of the father. So we're not, able to trace our lineage through our mother. And at the same time, the identity of Jewishness was in accordance with the halachic definition and how that had developed in Europe. So that was nothing that we had maintained. And as a matter of fact, the Europeans were the only ones who knew so much about halakha, because all of the other Jews who had come from North Africa, who had come from Yemen, who had come from the Arab states, even those who had come from Ethiopia later, they maintained a lot of the traditions from the first temple. They maintained a lot of the Torah-based temples. They didn't maintain the rabbinical traditions. So that was something that we just didn't fit into that umbrella. And they did it purposely, because they knew we wouldn't fit into that umbrella, because they asked us to be able to show documentation. We said, we don't have documentation. The only thing that we have is 400 years of memory in America and 2,000 years of our connection to our spiritual connection to this land, which doesn't go away just because we were away from the land for a little while. That law of return then boxed us out. And so from that moment, we began a political struggle here in Israel to be able to maintain our rights, because those who had initially received the legal status, that status was revoked from them. And then we went into a political struggle now for against, first of all, their definition of what and who is a Jew, and then secondly, against the political state that they were trying to establish here, that wouldn't allow our people to come from wherever they are in the world just because of our skin color. So we had struggled up until the 1990s, and then there was agreements with the Israeli government, the American government, and our community to allow us to be able to receive at the least temporary residency status, and then in 2003 receive permanent residency status, and then receive citizenship going forward. But it had been a protracted war, a back and forth tug of war for this entire period of time, because they didn't, and they still don't until this very day, recognize who we are. But the beautiful thing about somebody knowing who they are, whether you recognize it or not, that's not going to change who I am. And I'm confident enough in knowing who I am and knowing the God that I serve and knowing that I'm in the right place at the right time doing the right thing. So whether you accept it or not, whether you accept me or not, whether you realize it and recognize it or not, that's not going to make any difference. And so we continue to march on.
Absolutely, absolutely, Ambassador. And to back up your stance, what you're saying about the 400 years of chattel slavery and through the memorization of who we are, I would like to turn to a book called Black Song, The Forge and the Flame, on pages 31 and 32 by John Lavelle Jr. He states, if the American white man fancies that he was the first to teach the Bible to his black slave, he is quite mistaken. Mungo Park, as affirmed by Marlon L. Stokely, found that Fantuma, the Catholic schoolmaster, had Arabic versions of the Pentateuch, the Psalms of David, and the book of Isaiah. The unlearned Mandinkas entertained him with stories of Joseph and his brethren, Moses, David, and Solomon. They gave out the stories as part of their own folklore and were very much surprised to learn that white men had heard of them. If many slaves already knew a great deal of the Bible, the whole pattern of the origin and development of the backgrounds of the spirituals in America will have to be reconsidered. And that is aligning what you're saying. So we're at the changing of the Aliyah. We know originally it was whatever in your heart you was Jewish. They seen the influx of Israelites coming in, so they changed the law of return to two things. Either you was born of a Jewish mother, and we know that our records were destroyed through the process of being exiled from out of the land and going through chattel slavery, etc., etc. Or we would have to go through halakha, and we know that the late Rabbi broke down in the African Hebrew Israelites of Jerusalem, A Village of Peace, on the Bev Smith show. He was defining how we didn't convert to Judaism. Now we're coming up into roughly 1972, 1977. See, I'm trying to push this thing, forward. So, because of, us not being recognized under the umbrella of what determines or what defines a Jew with the Sanhedrin, could you explain spiritually and geopolitically? Notice how I keep doing that, because I want the listening audience to recognize that the moves that we were making wasn't religious in base. Yes, spiritual, but it also had geopolitical, underlying overtones, so to say. So from 72 to 77, give us geopolitically and spiritually the push and the drive to cause us to develop our own institutions. One of the first institutions was our very first school, the Kingdom School and Holiness. And then later it became the Akhbar Brotherhood School. Could you explain, because of Israel not giving, well, the state of Israel not giving us benefits, et cetera, it pushed us into developing our own institution. Could you explain that and also explain some of the institutions we developed? Thank you, Ambassador.
During that period of time, we were faced with major challenges. We had a significant amount of our community members deported from the land. We had to go into hiding. We had to change, our strategy in regards to how we're going to maintain ourselves in the land, because we have brothers who were going out and working an entire day and month to sustain their families. But then at the end of the month, they wouldn't get paid because the people who they're working for knew that they were undocumented, and so they took advantage of it. We had the children who initially we had wanted to go to the local schools and to have our children taught, but they wouldn't receive us into the local schools. We had children who needed, and elderly people as well, who needed health benefits. We had children and elderly people and others who needed access to the health institutions of the state, but they refused to give us access to those institutions. So we didn't have any benefits. We didn't have anything. And during that period of time, as a matter of fact, we were still establishing ourselves, because remember, we had just been 4 years in the land and going forward. So all of this is just about 10 years from our arrival to Israel. Got me? Can you hear me?
I'm sorry. Yes, we can hear you. We lost you where you stopped at 10 years.
Okay.
Because yeah, go ahead.
So we're talking about the first 10 years since our arrival to Israel. And those are some very trying times, because remember, we only had about 2-3 apartments where all of the community members had to kind of bunch up in. We're talking about 30 people in one apartment with two rooms, and we're talking about people who didn't have access to anything. We're talking about people who didn't have any financial backing, because the majority of the people who came home, they left everything behind. They didn't want anything to do with America anymore. So even if they still had homes and money and cars, they left it all alone, following the vision of repatriating back home. So they said, all of those trinkets from America, they can stay there. We don't need it. We're going to go and establish a new life for ourselves, just with the clothes that we have on our backs, and that's it. No money in our pockets, anything. But when we realized it, the Israeli government intended on trying to starve us out by not allowing us the ability to work, and not allowing us access to any of the institutions, and not allowing us to be part and parcel of the Israeli society, just like everybody else who had made Aliyah to Israel. Then we realized that, yeah, we have to establish our own institutions, because if we came anyways to establish the long-awaited kingdom of God on earth, that still meant that institutions had to go along with that. And so we have to be faced with those challenges to force us now to not be reliant on anybody externally but ourselves and the God that we serve. And so we established our own internal educational, what we call dedicational system, where the children, would wake up in the morning and they would transform the homes that they lived in, 30 people in one home, transform those homes now transform the living room into a school. All the children would gather in the living room, the same living room where just the night before people were sleeping. Now it becomes a school. And then, when it was warm outside, then we would go, or they would go, and sit outside and study sitting on the rock. When we needed, we understood that we couldn't have access to health institutions. So we said, okay, well, the best thing that we can do is to practice preventative medicine so that we wouldn't have to get to the hospitals, because we can't get to the hospitals. We don't have money to pay for, to the health care that we need. And they don't want to allow us access to those institutions. So the best thing that we can do is make sure that we don't get sick. And so we did what we need to do to not get sick. So we implemented, the necessity of exercise, and at least 3 times a week to sweat. We wanted everybody to get a deep tissue massage. We changed our diet from the diet that we had known in America of, consuming some of everything from chitlins, all the way down to fried chicken and other things. We took all of that out of our diet, slowly but surely, and we became full vegans. And then we grew our own foods. And so all of these things then allowed us now to be self-sufficient and dependent on ourselves. So we were able to create then jobs internally. We built our own birthing center where naturally approximately 1,000 children were born natural birth inside the community. So we did all of these things because it was necessary for us to do them. And we had to do them because we were faced with these challenges. This is the first 10 years of our since our arrival to Israel. We realized how important it was for us to now rely on ourselves. But also, we were continuing to rely on our brothers and sisters who were still in America, who had supported, the idea of us repatriating back home, but they just couldn't do it. They couldn't come home at the moment, and everybody have their own issues. They have their own challenges. So for some people, it's just not time yet, but they are able, and they were able to support us from afar. And so we created then, this village idea before the village had existed. So we were operating as a community, as a village, as a self-sufficient group of people before we even had the actual community itself. The community idea existed there. And so we were looking out for one another to ensure that at the least, if I have one cookie, I'm not going to eat the one cookie on my own to just be full. I'm going to now share it with my 10, 15 siblings or community members or whatever, just to ensure that at the least we can be able to, get a little something. So there were people who were malnourished in a lot of things. It wasn't easy. It wasn't just, we came home and everything we were challenged. We were seriously challenged for all of, that beginning period. But it caused us to be able to understand the importance of us now putting these institutions in place so that we won't be relying on anybody on the outside, but more so than that, so we can be able to provide an alternative to the life that our brothers and sisters are living on the outside. And so now all of these models of institutions, from the point of, because I know you're going in, in time frames or whatever, so I don't want to jump the gun. But I do want to say that all of the ideas of the institutions within this first 10-year period of time were what laid the foundation for us to be able to, once we actually moved to the community itself, now we're able to actually implement these ideas in real time in actual buildings, actual institutions with actual people who are working there, who had gained, some type of experience just on the job training. We had midwives who became midwives because there was somebody who needed to birth a baby, and they just happened to be in the area. And so now they did it. They did it one time, and now we depend on them to do it again and again and again and again. And so that's how that actually developed. So the idea of the community came as a result of the experiences that we had, the challenges that we were faced with, and the understanding that we needed to only be reliant on ourselves.
That's very interesting. That's very interesting because I know I was, I talked directly to Prince Gabriel Hagedorn, and he was expressing like when they was in Liberia, it was a woman about to have a baby and couldn't make it to the hospital. So from there, this was the first time. So I think that was like roughly 68-ish, somewhere around
Yeah.
there. That created later the House of Light. So 1977, where we at? I also know, I think Rabbi knew the late Ben Ami Ben Yisrael HaMoshiach wrote in the book, The Messiah and the End of This World. He gave you a chronology. Along with the absorption manual, you see this chronology. And 1977 sticks out because this right here became the sign that the physical kingdom of Yah is here. So could you give us, because you were born there, and I know you speak
You
Hebrew.
went out.
We
You
want
went out for a moment, so I couldn't hear what you were saying.
okay, you can hear me now?
Yeah.
Okay, okay. So from 77 coming into the 80s, and Ben Ami saying the coming of the kingdom of Yah is now here in 1977, like physical form. What was going on in the late 70s into the 80s, and what change were taking place in the process?
I didn't hear the last part, but I'm gonna try to answer. From what I did hear from you, you were
I
asking.
think he said what changes were taking place in the process from I think the 70s to the 80s, correct?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay,
From 77 to, let's say, the early 80s.
so in the late 70s, that's when the actual governmental structure of the community
Right,
was established, right? So you had those people who were considered the Holy Council, the princes. That picture right there, some of the original princes and others would come along. So the governmental structure of this community of the kingdom of God had then, been developed, and now we have um, leadership that is actually what we call spiritual leadership that is directed and that is guided by the principles that we attribute a lot of those attributions that we give to God Almighty, which is divine leadership. Divine leadership is leadership that is pleasing in the eyes of God, and that allows these leaders to be actually guided by principles and by moral compass that is absolutely different from what we know in the world. And so in 1977, this is when we said that the kingdom of God was in its glory. And now we could be able to go on the stepping stones now that we needed to lay down so that we can be able to at least get the foundation laid. That's laid. We're good now. Now it's time for us to start building on that foundation going forward. And so then we started looking also externally at developing the we started looking forward at or externally at developing also some of those missions in America as well that will be able to now sustain us now that we've laid the foundation, now that we're ready to go, we're ready to start building on this foundation that had been established. Now we're ready to take it on to the next level. And so now that the kingdom of God is in its glory, now we can be able to go forward with actually building the home after we had laid down the foundation. And so the 1970s to 1980s was a significant period of time because this is also when the institutions were actually built. So you had, the School of the Prophets, and you had the House of Life, and you had the idea of the school, but it was it was still in development, but it was called the Kingdom School in Holiness. You had the body of men that are now considered the divine leadership or the spiritual leaders of the community going forward. We had recognized Ben Ami's job as the spiritual leader, the one who was chosen to actually sit at the head of the council of the princes to elevate us forward. We started with the outreach programs with Prince Ashriel, who was the international ambassador, that he was going all over the world, letting everybody know now that the kingdom of God has come. We had people who went down to let Haile Selassie know that the kingdom of God has come in its glory in Israel. So all of this period of time, now it's time to work. Now we laid the foundation. Now it's time for everybody to know about us. And so going into the 1980s, this was actually a period of time where we started gaining notoriety internationally, because from those relationships that were being made through the international staff and Prince Ashriel, now everybody started turning their eyes to us. And so you had people like, for example, the Minister Farrakhan, who had come up in 1978 to 79 to see what was taking place in Israel. What were we doing? You had the Neville brothers who would come up to see what were we doing. You had Ray Charles who would come up to see what we were doing. So now, it's no longer just the idea of what it is we want to develop. Now we're actually developing it. And then we move from the few apartment complexes or apartments, right, that we had. Now we moved actually into a community. Now we're actually inside of a community that we could be able. I mean, it was an abandoned absorption center, and we took that abandoned absorption center and we developed that now into what you know today to be the Village of Peace. So we rebuilt the homes that were there, and we started farming. And we took some of the buildings and we turned them now into the actual institutions. And so we implemented food programs and other things like that. We went into full gear. It was time now for us to actually go into full gear. And you had the youth who had started establishing what was called the CFF and the the Chosen First Fruit and the Youth on the Move, which were the youth programs that they had established now to be able to allow the youth to have something, or some type of structured program that they now could be able to operate within, and not just be just a group of youth. They actually wanted to get started and get busy as well. So this was a period of time where it was time to go, and we started going from the like you said, 1977, when the kingdom of God was heard in its glory, and into the 1980s. And I know what you want to go into now that we start talking about the 1980s, but I'm gonna let you talk about it first, and then I'll go into it.
Yes. You already know see, you know my mind, Ambassador. You know my mind. So now we're in the 1980s. So we know that because the kingdom is in its glory from 1977, we see something known as the King Alpha Plan. And in that King Alpha Plan, which is a reenactment of COINTELPRO, counterintelligence program to stop the rise of a Black Messiah who would electrify the national aims of Black America. So they recanted this, not recanted, excuse me, they reenacted this, revamped it with the King Alpha Plan. Later on, the King Alpha Plan became known as Rex 84. Now, during this time in the 1980s, we see global international conspiracy where at the time the Israeli
I'm sorry.
government and the United
Repeat what you just said. That you see a global international
yes,
conspiracy.
yeah,
We probably
global.
you gotta lean forward so that your mic does not go out
Okay,
on certain words.
okay. Let me turn myself up. Okay, can y'all hear me now?
Yes, sir.
Good. Okay, so there's this international conspiracy with the United States government and the Israeli government to stop the influx of Israelites coming in. So we see this massive raid that took place in the United States, and we know our international ambassador, the late Prince Ashriel, got caught up in that situation. So we see himself and 29 others incarcerated. We see this being mentioned in the works of Ben Ami's Answering the Challenge. And at the same time, in Israel, we have something known as the Day of Showing Strength, when the Israeli government came down to Dimona with tanks, hoses, etc., etc. Geopolitically, what was going on, and spiritually and prophetically, what was going on at this time, Ambassador?
In 1977, another thing had happened. This was the first time where, see, the socialists under Ben Gurion and all the other Europeans who had come to Israel to establish the state, they were in control of all the institutions from the establishment of the state of Israel in 1948 until 1977. In 1977, this was then kind of what they called the beginning of a new age, where the Likud party under Menachem Begin had now taken the throne. And after all of these years, now you have the right wingers who are now in charge. The right wingers were the ones mostly, like I say, from the North African countries and the Arab countries, and those who considered themselves Sephardic, those who had come, who said that they trace their lineage back to the to those who had who had fled the Inquisition in 1492. And so now Israel is in the hands of a new right-wing government that nobody ever thought that this is something that could actually happen. Now, in the meantime, in between time, you had about a year later, 1978, you had Anwar Sadat and you have Menachem Begin, who had signed on the agreement that actually brought peace between Egypt and Israel. Now, this was the first time you have a peace agreement now between a major Arab country and the state of Israel. At the same time, you had in America Prince Asiel from the Hebrew community and Minister Farrakhan from the Nation of Islam, who had said and spoke about the necessity of us working together as the sons and daughters of Sarah and the sons and daughters of Hagar. And no longer will we be separate people, but we are going to come together as a unit and work together for the betterment of our people. Going forward, you also had in Israel in 1982, you had the first Lebanon War. Now, that was a bloody war that was taking place in Israel, and Israel had, from 1982 up until approximately 2000, they maintained military presence in Lebanon. This is one of the most bloody wars that Israel has known. Now, remember, I mean, beforehand, you had a lot of other wars. In 1973, you also had the Yom Kippur War, right, which was also another bloody war. So in the midst of everything that we're doing in Israel, remember, we still have to deal with these wars that are taking place.
You know,
Because
I mean, I'm sorry to interrupt you, but really, I find that very interesting. That at that time, you know, the support from the Nation of Islam, from a lot of like people in America that were supportive. Why do you see that the support? Do you think that there's a dwindling support nowadays, though? Even though we're gonna go through the timeline, because I'm like thinking about like Nation of Islam, they were supportive, they were there, like they spoke up. You know, like I mean, I don't know. Maybe I'm just jumping the gun, but and maybe you'll talk about that later. But I think it's interesting that they supported and then you guys accepted support. You guys worked together. You
We
know,
we um we had a lot of support, and we still do, from a lot of the brothers and sisters in different communities in the churches, the Nation of Islam, and some of the Pan-African organizations and others, because our desire was to reestablish ourselves in our homeland. Now we understood, the geopolitical sensitivities, right? With how people had looked at those who established the state of Israel, but we also understood how providence was working in our favor, because we weren't just moving, politically just on our own. We were moving according to divine plan. And so we could lay out that divine plan and show how it's in alignment with the things that we're actually doing. I mean, some people didn't understand the moves at that moment, but we knew that it was prophetic. And so we had to do it. I mean, it wasn't a question of if we want to or not. We had to go. We had to leave in order to come and establish ourselves here. So when we made that clear to our brothers and sisters that, look, we have to go, because it's that time. The calling is there. They understood that. They understood it. They didn't necessarily agree with the policies of the government of Israel, which we did. I mean, like I say, we were established. We were experiencing some harsh things at the hands of the government of Israel. So we didn't agree with with their policies either, and we still don't agree with their policies, with a lot of those policies. But we also understand that we have to stay focused and stay aligned on what the purpose is that we have, and not get involved in what they have going on, because we also have to remember that it does say that I will overturn it until he whose right it is. And so at times, you can't have nothing overturned if you're not in place to be able to receive it. And so part of our being in place to be able to receive it is so that when it does overturn, when we are prepared to be able, when we have shed ourselves from a lot of what we've picked up all of those years, and we manage now to be able to put ourselves in position where we can be an alternative to what our brothers and sisters are experiencing in the world. Now we can be able to show something that is quite different from the Holy Land. Because if the law is going to go forth from Jerusalem and the word of God from Zion, then it has to come from this place, and the light will emanate from this place. And so we understood that. So we understood the importance of the place. I'm not talking about the people who are in charge politically. I'm looking at it from the spirit, and we've been looking at it from the spiritual aspect, because remember also, King Saul was the king of Israel for 30 years, but David was actually the anointed. But King Saul maintained the throne, but David was the king. And there was a
That's
period
right.
of time before King David actually took the throne. And all of that time, that from the moment that it was known to, or that was brought to King Saul, that you are no longer the king, this day, Prophet Samuel said, this day, God has torn the kingdom away from you and has given it to your brother.
That's right.
And that Prophet Solomon told King Saul that this day
Ran him down for 16 years. That's right. The ambassador here be coming back in a second.
you got me.
Yeah, he ran King David down for 16 years, ambassador.
Until he actually, took the throne. So you have to realize that most things that happen spiritually, they don't manifest immediately in the in the in the physical. So there's a period of time when things are actually brewing, where if you don't understand the spiritual aspect, you would be mixed up looking at how things look with the naked eye, because you can't even understand how is it that you can take a small seed and plant this small seed in the ground, and somebody had told you that it was going to develop now into a huge apple tree, and it was going to produce millions of apples, that would produce millions of seeds, that would be able to produce millions of trees. The only thing that you could see is that tree, I mean that small seed. But that small seed is what holds the key to everything that we're expecting to see in the future. And if you don't understand that there's a process for that seed to be developed and germinated, and you would need to plant it in the right soil, and you would need to make sure it has enough, sunlight, and it has enough water. If you just put the seed there and walk away and expect to come back the next day and see a tree there, then you missed the entire process. So there were a lot of people who couldn't see the process because they were expecting something to happen like they know just in the physical, but they didn't consider the spiritual process that it'll take. And so so these wars and everything were happening while we were continuing to develop, and it actually reached a boiling point in the mid 1980s because COINTELPRO was real when they said we have to, and when in the 1960s, the idea was to prevent the rise of a Black Messiah who would unify and electrify the masses of the people. They didn't intend for that to just be for a short period of time. They intended for that to be forever, to forever prevent the rise of somebody who could be able to provide an alternative to the life that our people are living in America at this point. And anybody who seemed to be a threat or have the possibility to be able to provide that alternative, they then are put into the bullseye. And so by us being in Israel and managing to develop those institutions and managing to start showing that we do have an alternative to what our people are experiencing in the world, now it's time to trump up the charges against us.
So here's a question. I'm sorry, I don't mean to interrupt you. Listen, so COINTELPRO was in America. When you guys went to repatriate into Israel, were you guys dual citizens, and that like held you to the American law, and that's what kind of like created this kind of ability for COINTELPRO to try to infiltrate what you're doing? Or was it more that the flak was coming upon the Hebrew Israelites in America and they were beginning to attack them there, and then that would filter into your situation? Or did you guys like give up your citizenship to America, and then Israel was working with America to like enact COINTELPRO against your organization, your religion?
So remember, we had access, and still do today, to a lot of those documents from the 1970s and 1980s that the State Department was sending back and forth to the Israeli government here in Israel, and vice versa. And we saw, how they considered us. We understood how the Israeli government saw us. We understood also that the American government didn't want to have nothing to do with us, but they were willing to work alongside Israel in order to stop us in our tracks. And so, like I said, it was time to begin to trump up the charges. And so we had still American citizenship in Israel, because remember, up until the 1990s, we didn't have Israeli citizenship. And once they began deporting a lot of us, we had to denounce our American citizenship so that they wouldn't be able to deport us, and we become now stateless people. So the community members who were still on the outside in America, who were galvanizing the people and who were building up the support and who was gathering funds in order to be able to assist us, because remember, we didn't have access to the institutions, we didn't have the ability to work. So everything that we were doing, we had to just figure it out right there. And so a lot of that support was actually coming from our external jurisdictions or extensions that were being developed all over America. So we had something in Atlanta, and we had something in DC, and we had something in Chicago, we had something in New York, we had something in Detroit, we had something in LA, we had something in Houston. So all of these places then were to come together to be able to support the brothers and sisters here, because that was the only support we were going to get. We're not getting no support from none of the Jewish institutions. We're not getting no support from the Israeli institutions. We're not getting no support from those institutions that are supporting Palestinian people. So we weren't getting anything from nowhere. And as a matter of fact, we were persona non grata in Israel. And so wherever you saw us, it was like, let's get them out of here as soon as possible. And this is what they were saying, in those internal emails that a lot of, WikiLeaks gave us the ability to access, and, some other ways that we were able to access a lot of these documents. So they were working hand in hand in order to sabotage. And obviously, of course, there's no way in the world you could have, an organization like ours and you don't infiltrate it. It's impossible. So of course you had some internal informants that gave them a lot of the information about what we were doing and how we were doing it all over the world. And so they wanted to stop it. So what they say? Well, they said that we were fabricating information and credit cards and documents and passports and whatever else all over the world. Well, in 1985, they started rounding up a lot of our brothers and sisters in America. They raided, our institutions in America. Prince Ashriel was the one who was the international ambassador and the spokesperson for the community, who they wanted to get first, and all the other brothers and sisters that had come along. And on this side, it was that we were now prepared to protest that. Right? Because we were saying that, hold on now, we haven't done anything wrong. Our brothers and sisters haven't done anything wrong in America. But not only have they not done anything wrong in America, now on this end, they gathered up approximately 47 or so of our brothers and sisters who were working, who had found a job finally, right? Picking oranges. As a matter of fact, my father was one of those ones who were rounded up. They gathered all of these people and they wanted to deport them immediately. Even in addition, older mother in the community, 60-something years old, pick her up in her pajamas in the middle of the night, as if we're some terrorists, and round us up like we've done something just absolutely illegal and just crazy, and surround the entire compound. And then once we say, okay, well, we're going to give ourselves some time to start to get together and protest this to the world, they wouldn't even allow us to protest. So in April of 1986, they surrounded the community on the day that we had intended to protest. We said that we were just going to just have a peaceful march to Jerusalem and protest what they're doing to our community here and there. And they said absolutely not. So they surrounded the community with tanks, with dogs. They had snipers on the buildings. They had all the police gear, the riot gear. They came ready. They came prepared, and they said that within 7 days there will be not one Hebrew Israelite in Israel anymore. So they already had a plan, but the leader, with his infinite wisdom and following the spiritual guidance, he said that we know what they came to do, and we're not going to give them, that satisfaction. So we're not going to march. We want to march, but we're not going to do so. We will wait. But if the trumpet does blow, we want everybody to know that we are concerned, because we know what these people are capable of doing, and we know what they want to do. But we're not afraid. And if we need to walk, if we need to march, then that's what we'll do. So that gave us then, the international notoriety, because at the same time in America, we had all of these organizations and people who were gathering, Universal Brotherhood and others that were gathering to assist during this period of time, which what we call the Great Siege, because they were trying to destroy and dismantle the community, and they were operating in such a way where it was clearly racist. And so, the support that we managed to gather in the world, it allowed us then a few years later to reach some type of agreement with the American government and the Israeli government that will allow us the ability to receive some type of legal status in Israel. And as a matter of fact, a few years later, all of the charges that they had put on our community, we were totally vindicated from those charges. So, evidently there was nothing but a fear of seeing a community that is beginning to thrive and do for self in Israel. And that was something that was evidently a threat. So now we're in the at the end of the 1980s, because we managed to overcome, that experience, but we're never going to forget that experience. So every year we have what is called the Day of the Show of Strength, to remind us of that day, that when all we wanted to do was to protest against the despicable actions of the government against people who were just seeking peace, they were prepared to obliterate and annihilate us. We would never forget that, and every year we now celebrate, or we acknowledge the Day of the Show of Strength, so that we could ensure that we know where we are, we know who we're dealing with. And so now we're going into the 1990s.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And we know that in the 1990s, that start like roughly around 1991, we see that there's, um, agreeable circumstances, so to say. And this is when we see a change. We're seeing now Prince Asiel had galvanized um, the United States Embassy to halt the structure, our new school known as the Akbar Brotherhood School that opened in 1993. We also see in 1991 something called the Treaty of Understanding. And we know where out, well, I know where it's outlined in that. I'll let you explain that. And we also see this process in the late 90s now. We're seeing the change geopolitically now. We're starting to receive citizenship. And also, I want you to explain to us being in the IDF, the purpose of us being in the IDF, because that's something that really like shakes a lot of people's heads um, within the conscious community, within the Afrocentric community, when they see us in the Israeli military. Even yourself, you also was in the Israeli military, the IDF as well. So could you explain from 1991 to 2000?
I'm going to start at about 89, 90, because that was the period of time where Aryeh Deri had become the Minister of Interior. And in 1980, well, he actually started a bit earlier, but in 1989, 1990, the chief rabbi of Israel, Rabbi Obadiah Yosef, who was the chief Sephardic rabbi, he directed Aryeh Deri. Now we're talking about people who are Orthodox Jews from the. They were mainly on the left. They mainly went with the left because for them it was just okay. Well, all we need is to be able to receive what it is that we can get for our community, and everybody else. I mean, whatever it is that you could offer, I mean, we'll go with you. And so, in that period of time, the left had actually taken over once again under Yitzhak Rabin, who was the prime minister at that time. And
Right,
so,
right.
and so they directed. There was an agreement that we would once again go and apply for American citizenship. Those who had renounced their citizenship, and now we could work on procedures to be able to receive Israeli temporary residency status. And so we began that process with Aryeh Deri, but then he was put into jail because of charges that he had for fraud and other things. And so the minister who would come afterwards didn't necessarily continue on with that process, but Yitzhak Rabin, he seemed to be a bit in favor of assisting us during that period of time. And he was assassinated in 1994. And remember, there was the Gulf War in 1991. So we're still trying. I mean, Saddam Hussein shooting rockets to Israel, and this was a major turn in the geopolitical understanding, because this was one of the first times that our leader Ben Ami gave a presentation speaking about, our geopolitical position. And so what he was saying is that in terms of our geopolitics, we were moving according to providence and how everything was unfolding according to providence. But at the same time, we also understood the geopolitical moves that were actually taking place during that period of time. And he said that we see the world through the eyes of Israelites. We are Israelites, we are Hebrew Israelites, and we return to Israel. So during this war, we absolutely don't see the world like Rafsanjani and our Muslim brothers. We love our Muslim brothers wherever they are in the world, but we don't see the world through their lens. We don't understand the geopolitics in accordance with how Islam sees it. We see it through the eyes of the prophets of Israel. And so this was the first time that he really gave a clear understanding of our geopolitical position, which is, yes, we will do whatever is necessary to defend Israel, specifically while we are here developing the kingdom of God. We'll do whatever is necessary to maintain our presence here, but at the same time, understanding the importance of us being in alignment with the prophecies, opposed to just looking at things from the geopolitical perspective, but understanding how they both are intertwined. Because with the spiritual, you also have something that is pretty material that goes along with that complements each other. So you have one that's working, the plan, and you have the plan itself. We're working that plan all throughout. So 1991, you have the Gulf War. And that was another opportunity for us to be able to show that, because beforehand they tried to say that we were a fifth column inside of Israel, trying to undermine the state along with the Palestinian Liberation Organization, the PLO, and then they said that we were actually worse than the PLO. And they were trying to continue to stick a lot of things on us to show that we are some enemies of the state from internally. But then we proved them wrong, that we're no enemies of the state. I mean, we're here just like everybody else is here for the purpose of serving our God. We're not trying to dismantle, the state or whatever, but we do understand, the spiritual aspect of Israel and what Israel is supposed to represent. And what we're doing now is not what Israel is supposed to represent. So we will maintain, that position as those who are on the watchtower shouting out. But nonetheless, we did have a memorandum of understanding going forward that we'll start now to document the people who are here. They can be able to receive proper status and at the least receive, work permits and be able to work. Now, in 1993, we finally established a school, the Akba School, where we went from having, the children studying in, small rooms and in the front room and outside and all those. Now we have an institution. Now we have an actual place where, this school was built with the contributions from some of the congressmen in America that earmarked those funds to be able to help the community here. So we built the Akba School in 1993, and now we have the ability to actually properly educate the children in a place that makes more sense than what it was beforehand. And then, like I said, Yitzhak Rabin was assassinated in 1994, and then later on, now the politics in Israel started changing. 1995, sorry. The politics in Israel started changing because after he was assassinated, now Shimon Peres became prime minister, but then he lost in the elections to Benjamin Netanyahu, and that was the first time that Benjamin Netanyahu then took on the prime ministership. And during all of that turmoil, all of those things happening and taking place, we didn't brought what's the brother's name? Stevie Wonder, right? We brought Stevie Wonder to Israel to come and see what it is that we're doing here in Israel during the 1990s. We brought a lot of other people, who were very significant worldwide, so they can be able to see what we're doing here, and then we can be able to help, or they can be able to help and be mouthpieces for us internationally to show that we have brothers and sisters in the land, because everybody's always only focusing on the political aspect of what's taking place in the land, but then they forget that we actually have brothers and sisters who are here. And so, yes, there are political things between the Palestinians and the Jews, but at the same time, you have a third narrative which we represent in the midst of everything that's taking place here. And so we had to continue to show and to share, that information with our people so that they could know that we are here, we exist here, and all of the other noises or whatever that are kind of blocking us out was something that that we now have to start putting the focus on. Now we're going to let everybody know. Yeah, we let everybody know in the past, but now because of these geopolitical developments, now people's attention span is kind of swaying away from the community, and they're only focusing in on the Arab-Israeli conflict here in Israel. And so at the end of the 1990s, now we had another agreement that perhaps we could start talking about permanent residency in Israel. And so in 2003, the Minister of Interior, he finally understood the importance of allowing us the ability to be able to have that legal status in Israel as permanent residents. But then part of the agreement also was that we will receive permanent residency status, and we will also serve in the military. And in exchange, we're also going to receive plots of land for everyone who's serving, plots of land to be able to allow us to develop our community on those plots of land in the units called the Nachal units. So that was part of the agreement for us going forward, that we'll serve in the military. Now, and this is what you were saying by the Hebrew, the importance of people understanding the service in the military. First of all, in Israel, it is obligatory to serve in the military. And people who don't serve in the military, the majority of those, probably besides the ones who have very, very strong political connections, with the way society is built here, you don't really have access to a lot of the opportunities, the institutions, and a lot of other things if you didn't serve in the military. And so, being intelligent people, we understood the importance of us not only serving in the military, because the majority of the people didn't serve in neither did I, in combat units. We served in units where we can be able to gather intel. We served in units that allow us to understand the importance of being able to be strategic and operate, in accordance with, military tactics. We understood that Israel, the military itself, is actually the melting pot of the Israeli society, and so everybody, you're going to meet everybody there. And so, if we're going to meet, if there's a place that we want to go to be able to shine our light, to be able to show what we represent, it'll be there in the military. So that now we come in touch with Arab Israelis and with Druze and with Ethiopians, in other aspects of society, you don't have that opportunity. So now you're sleeping right next to an Arab and an Ethiopian and an Ashkenazi Jew and a Druze and somebody from a Christian community, and now you have the ability to be able to share with them the foundational principles of the community itself. And so we did that, and we're doing that. And one of the main emphasis that we put while we were in the military is the importance of us being able to receive vegan food. Because prior to that, they weren't really considering veganism as nothing that was significant. It's like, okay, you probably have 2-3 things or whatever. But then the question then was that, okay, we'll bring you vegan food, but why are you vegans? Explain to me. And then we went into the health aspects. We went into Genesis 1:29, the preferred diet that was given to us by the God of Israel. We went into the effects that this has on the ecology, on the water, on the air, on the animals. And then now, today, as a result of that, Israel has now become the leader in veganism in the world. We were practicing veganism from the 1970s, but people didn't necessarily We didn't come in contact with the Israeli society as such to be able to share that with them. So that was one of the things that we managed to now provide to the Israeli society. Now they're more interested in our lifestyle and understanding why do what we do. They didn't have, prior to us being inducted to the military, they weren't providing or producing alternative boots that were not of leather from animals. But they do it today. They were not producing or providing the military uniforms that were 100% cotton, but they do it today. So a lot of these things that they have enacted now, not only in the military, but remember that the military is a microcosm of the Israeli society. And so everybody that you come in contact with in the military, you will have that opportunity now to be able to actually follow them through the Israeli society, because most people who get to the high levels of government and the high levels of military and the high levels of banking and the high levels of development in Israel, everybody matriculated through the military. So you have that opportunity now to spend, 3 years with somebody who now became the prime minister because you all served 20 years ago. And that's one of the things, at least for me, that I know that a lot of people who are very helpful of the community today, these are people who I served with in the military 3 years as brothers. And now they understand, my lifestyle better than what they did beforehand, because we didn't have that ability to be able to communicate with everybody. So it's not just Israeli Europeans that are serving in the military. Everybody in Israel, Arab Israelis, Ethiopians, Moroccans, Bedouins, Druze, Christians, what you name it, they're all in the military. 1 out of 10 people in the military actually serve in a combat unit. The other 9 are in intel, telecommunications, a lot of other places where you can be able to get, some fundamental, practical knowledge and abilities that will actually follow you into the real world. So now you've spent 3 years of working in intel, you finished the military, now you can go directly into a high-paying job in the Israeli society because they rank that as significant. We have a problem with how things operate in terms of the strategies and the policies of the military, just like we have in every other aspect of the society. But I'm sure that we're not the only ones who have a problem with the aspects of society. I'm sure that our brothers and sisters in America probably have a problem with how the governmental institutions operate, but they don't stop going to work. I'm sure that they have a problem with how things operate in the health system, but they still have that, have access to those health systems. I'm sure that they're not proud of being American, but they still hold on to that American passport. So, whatever it may be, we still understand. We understand, the necessities as being in such an environment, in such a society, but we also understand how to take it and use it for our advantage, for the purposes that we have in order to be able to move forward. So we're not just going into the military so that we can do what they say. We have a plan that we're enacting when we go into the IDF, and we're bearing the fruits, and you can be able to see that in the Israeli society now.
I have a question. So you were in the military. I was in the military, in the American military. I was in the Air Force. How difficult was communication? Like, you're saying that this military is pretty much based on, like, Moroccans, Ethiopians. I mean, do you have to, like, become a polyglot? How did you guys learn how to, like, speak the language and communicate with each other from the military, and then be able to bring that into the society in Israel? I mean, how do you communicate? And how hard was it to learn how to get the community to learn how to communicate with the Israelis? Or is it mainly that they all speak English?
No. We're all bilingual, so we all speak Hebrew and English as first languages. So for us, it wasn't necessarily hard to communicate with them verbally, but it was hard in the beginning for us to be able to understand each other's cultures. It was hard in the beginning for us to be able to share who we were, because prior to that, although we thought and we hoped, but not a lot of people had access to the community. It was like we were being purposely isolated from the Israeli society. So the only thing that you would know about the community is what they write in the newspapers and on the news and what they say about us. But you're not going to hear directly from us. But now that we're all in the military, now I'm sitting down and I'm talking to people who represent every facet of society, every population in society. Now they all could be able to go back to their communities and say, well, no, that's not true about the Hebrew Israelite community, because I know somebody from that community. He's actually serving with me in my unit. And one thing about the military here is that you spend almost 24/7 with the same people for 3 years. So you become close. You become brothers. You're forced to learn and to be exposed to each other's cultures and traditions and and identity. And now not only are you forced to be exposed, you also now have to depend on this person with your life almost, because you out on the battlefield or whatever it is, you know that, okay, my brother, the mighty Hebrew, is not out here with me. But this brother right here is here with me night and day. Now, I have to be able to depend on him to watch my back, and he has to depend on me to watch his. Now it's no longer about the separation in terms of the communities. Now it's about us just being able to communicate as brothers and sisters. Now you're my brother, I'm your brother. I'm a Hebrew Israelite. You are a Moroccan Jew or Arab or Bedouin, but we're still brothers. Now that separation in terms of communities don't exist. So now you're going to come to my house and spend a weekend at my house and eat the food that I eat and see how I celebrate my holy days. And you're going to get deep into the aspect of what a Hebrew means. And you're going to go back and talk to your family about that. And I'm going to come to your family as well and sit at the dinner table with your family. And now they know when I come, they have to provide a vegan meal. They know that once the Sabbath comes in Friday night, I'm going into chill mode. They know these things about the community. And so this was one of the things that actually brought us into the mainstream of the Israeli society in terms of who we are and what we represent, because now we have the ability to be able to influence people on an individual level, where now it's not about what they say about the community. It's now I could be able to say individually that I know that community, because I know somebody who served with me, who was willing to give up their life for me. I am willing to now do whatever is necessary to protect that community. We both have problems with the Israeli government and the institutions and how things develop. And yes, we do. But at the same time now, being a Hebrew Israelite is not just a community that's over there. You're not going to be able to say now that, we're all going and serving the country, whoever we are, in order to protect and to preserve every one of us. But you all are the only ones who are not doing anything. What is your contribution to society? So now if anybody asks us, what is our contribution to society? And we know that the military is the main thing. Now you don't have a lot to say to us in regards to what our contribution is to society, because we've contributed just like you did. Everybody, we all on the same playing field now. We've done just as much as you've done, as much as you contributed. So you don't have any say and any special privileges now that I shouldn't have because you served in the military. Absolutely not. And as a matter of fact, the majority of the people who don't serve in the military, they're looked down on. They're looked as not being patriotic. They're looked at as being leeches. They're looked at as not being not willing to contribute to society like everybody else. And they're asking the question: if my mother needs to stay up at night because she's concerned about what is taking place with me because I'm out there in the military, she doesn't know that I'm not on the front line. But you put on that military uniform, and for whoever is looking from the outside, you are part and parcel of whatever is taking place there. Your mother don't know about that. But now, why do your mother not need to sleep at night, and my mother can sleep at night very well, when we are actually doing the same thing? We're looking out for each other. We want to provide, a safer society for everybody to be able to live in together, understanding that whatever threats are coming from the outside, we're all threatened by that. October 7th was an example of such. And even before that, in 2002, we had a member of
Right.
the community who was killed by one of the terrorists who had come into a wedding hall. He was singing, he was performing, and he was killed along with 5 other people in there. Did anybody ask him, "Are you part of the Hebrew Israelite community?" And
No.
will reserve it? Absolutely not. He was killed along with everybody else. So I mean, we're not naive about this. We know that we're all painted with a broad brush. Nobody's discriminating between everybody who's here in Israel is a liable target for anybody who's on the outside. And so,
Here's a question. Like,
yeah.
so when it really comes down to culture, so do you feel what parts of like the Israeli culture before that existed before and the culture of the Hebrew Israelites have you guys adopted and what they have adopted? And when you guys bring in the military aspect of it, how far into the military have you gotten? Are there any officers that come from the Hebrew Israelite community? How high ranking do they allow you to rank up, or do they hold you down? What are the? I mean, do they allow you just to join, but just like okay, only 3 years and get out, or are people really striving to retire? Or is it just only a qualification, just do 3 years and that's it? And in the military in America, you could spend like 40 to like your whole life in the military and retire at about 50, 60. Sometimes depending on become a general, etc. So, and I wanted to like just so I know I asked like a 3-pronged question, so I hope you can follow me here.
Right. Well, let's answer the first question. In regards to what aspects of the culture have the Israeli society adopted? Well, number one, we were vegan since the 1970s, and now Israel is considered the leader in vegan cuisine worldwide. We were the ones who started that. They didn't know about it so much. We opened the first restaurants, the first vegan restaurants in Israel in the 1970s. But during that period of time, nobody was really eating vegan like that. So we had already had it. We had the idea, but it wasn't time yet. They weren't open to the idea yet. They weren't exposed to it yet. They weren't ready to give up a lot of their habits and their because this is part of Israeli culture, consumption of meat. I mean, at the table, the holy day table, whatever. This is what they do. So, but in the night, but once we enlisted into the military and they started having access to us, and they were actually able to ask us a lot of these questions, then you started seeing people taking a different route in terms of how they uh, consume foods or their cuisines. So we take credit for that. We were the ones who brought that to them. So they adopted that from us. And then a
Right.
lot.
So the question is what have you adopted from them? I mean, have you guys embraced any aspect of their society into the Hebrew Israelite culture? That's the main, because you talked about the veganism. We were clear on that. I know that's awesome. That's a wonderful contribution. I wonder if
That's just
there's
one of
anything.
many, by the way.
Say it again.
I said that's just one of many. Another one is the fact, the idea of communal living now. We have about 10,000 people who come down to Dimona to visit the community every year almost, to see how we have managed to build this community that is, that was drug free and no crime. And, according to the police reports, per capita, we have the lowest crime in Israel. And these things are what they came and took from us. Now, I would probably say that one of the things that we adopted from them is probably the importance of being able to, because prior to that, we weren't in the Israeli society as such that we were able to, that a lot of people were going to higher education and all of that, or striving to have better jobs in the Israeli society, striving to become lawyers and striving to become doctors and striving to become, all of those things that are considered in the society. We mainly wanted to just focus on the community, but we also understood how important it was now that everybody who finishes the military goes directly to college. You go to college and or you pick up some skills in the military, and then you can go straight into the workforce. So we understood the importance now of us being able to have those people to go out to study, to bring back those degrees, to use those degrees for the development of the community itself. Prior to that, we weren't necessarily thinking like that. So I will say that's probably one of the things that we did adopt from them, is the importance of getting that higher education or those degrees to be able to further what it is that we want to do for our community and for the general Israeli community. In terms of the, because you asked a lot of questions. I'm trying to remember every one of them.
Okay, I'm sorry. I know I like kind of like did like a bullet thing. So okay, so I asked what were some of the things that you guys have adopted from Israeli community versus what they have adopted, and I also asked from the military, have you guys been able to achieve ranks?
Oh, right. So we have people who are matriculated to higher levels, commanding officers and things like that in the military. But we don't really have people who made the military a career. The majority of the people wanted to go in because, like I say, we had a plan and we executed the plan. The plan wasn't to just go into the military and just, all right, whatever it is that y'all say we need to do, that's what we need to do. And we had a plan to go in to expose the military to us and to expose the people in the military to us. So now they have a pamphlet in the military that we put together, about 100 pages, about every aspect of the life of an Hebrew Israelite in Israel. And so what they do now is they adjust for every one of the soldiers from our community who's coming into the military. They adjust to our needs because they already understand, okay, well, these are things that you don't do, right? We know that you keep the Sabbath day. We know that you don't eat meat. We know that you don't consume, any animal byproducts. We know that you don't wear any fabrics that are not natural. We know that you're not going to put on any boots. So we're going to accommodate you. We're going to come as close as we know that you're not necessarily pacifists, but you do stand for peace. So we're not going to put you in a position where you need to be on the battlefront unless it's something that you specifically choose. But they give us so many different options because they understand our culture, they understand who we are, and they want to at the least allow us to maintain that in the military. So they accommodate us in such a way where we don't need to compromise on what we are and who we are.
That's amazing. Here's another question: do they allow? Does the Hebrew Israelite community? Because from what I understood is that based on in Israel, females and males have to join the military. It's a requirement. So, do you guys send your women out to be in the military as a requirement when it comes down to the government? Because that if that's a government requirement, do you guys acquiesce to that, or is it just like, no, we don't allow our women to fight or be in the or to be a part of the military system?
So that's why it's important to understand that not everybody in the military are combat soldiers. You actually have a lot of areas where, at the least, yes, first of all, yes, our sisters do serve in the military. Those who don't want to go, they can conscientiously object, but most people want to have that experience of being able to be exposed to their peers from the Israeli society. So they want to go through that process. It's a process. It's an exciting one for a lot of people. They want to be exposed to other aspects of society. They want to be, go and create other friendships or whatever in the military with, even after the military, they maintain those friendships. So we don't prevent them, from being able to go in and to experience what they want to experience. And they have the choice of what it is you'd like to do in the military. So we have people, who went in and who gathered information as or who would operated as nurses, right, in the military, or at the least assistant nurses, and then they continue from there, to actually go and study nursing. And even we have some who had completed their doctor degrees and came back and now are able to facilitate a lot of things that we need in the community, so we don't need to be dependent on nobody else to do that for us. We have people who wanted to deal with secretarial work, right? So they learned a lot of those secretary skills or whatever, and then they were able to actually come back and make use of those. You have people who wanted to understand, how planes, how airplanes operate. So you had some that went to go be airplane technicians. You had some who, there are a lot. There's an array of things that people are able to do in the military that it really doesn't consist of anything that is combat or combat-like. And then you have those, if they choose to go into combat or whatever, which is not necessarily anything that has been done up until now, but they have that choice to be able to do so. And that was something that my leader had stressed in the early 2000s, was that we allowing our young people to go into experience, because he called this our wilderness, right? He said that the ones who had initially come to Israel and went through Liberia and experienced everything they experienced in Liberia to bring them to the point that they're in right now was their wilderness. But now, as young people who were born and raised in Israel and been protected within the community, now going out of the community to serve in the military, to be around people who you don't know like that, and now you're forced to really shine a light and be who you are in the midst of people who you don't. This is an experience as well for us. And so a lot of people want to experience that. A lot of people want to go through, the military and gain some friends and go out with their friends and go over to their friends' homes and go to events with their friends that they haven't been to beforehand and be exposed to things that they weren't exposed to before. They want to have that experience. They want to be able to experience Israel in its full sense. So we don't prevent that from them, but we also understand what our goal and objective is in the military, and everybody is necessarily sticking to it.
So here's the thing. So you're talking about people like kind of like visiting each other, and so have you guys kind of merged into the Israeli society, or is it more like you guys kind of visit their like lifestyle and then kind of come back to your society, or is it like a merging? And then the second question is, if someone commits a crime, so you've merged into the military, what happens? Do you have your own justice system that puts them into like a situation, or do they have to deal with the country of Israel and what their laws are?
So, we're part and parcel of Israel. We are part of the Israeli society. We live here. We're part of the society. We still have our community, absolutely. But not everybody live in the community, even in the city in Dimona, even prior to us going into the military. Not everybody live in the community. There are people who live outside the community. There are people who work, outside the community. There are people who live in other cities in the country. There are people who have friends outside of the community. So yes, we are part and parcel, but at the same time, we maintain, our principles as Hebrew Israelites wherever it is that we go. But we are part and parcel of the Israeli society, like everybody else who lives here. We have things just like every community that are different, right? We have things that are out of the ordinary. We have things that we maintain, but all in all, we live here, and we're not looking to isolate ourselves from everybody else who live here. I don't know any other communities in the world, or at the least, communities of African ancestry in the world, even in America, for example, who just remain in their community, closed out from everybody else, and not communicating with everybody else. You're part and parcel of the society. So you work and you pay taxes and you go out and you have a good time, and you sleep over at your friend's house, and you get to know new friends. Now you have families that you're bringing home, to present to your family as well. Then you build in friendships that allow you to be able to get into different jobs or whatever that you may not have had access to. You have information that's coming out from the government or whatever that we didn't know about beforehand. But those people who may be in these institutions are sharing the information with you. So, in that aspect, yes, we're part and parcel of the Israeli society. We're not giving up on the principles that we represent, that we stand for, but in terms of our interaction with the Israeli society, absolutely.
I just wanted to make sure that people just didn't think that you guys were on like some isolated compound and then just send people out to join the military and then they come back to the compound. No, they're integrated into Israeli society. They just hold up to the tenets of Hebrew Israelite society, and it's well respected within the Israel community in Israel.
Yes, ma'am.
So I'm gonna stop asking questions and let the thing continue. I just wanted to like clear a little bit things up and just really make an understanding about certain things. So let me just be quiet now.
I mean, you can ask. I mean, I'm cool. I mean, we having a conversation, so you're welcome to ask, my sister.
Well, I feel kind of weird because I'm waiting on my camera to load, and I feel bad because I'm not able to like show myself because my camera is dead.
Yeah, but I saw another conversation that you had as well that you didn't have your camera on. So
right. So I want to make sure that you didn't feel disrespected. With all due respect, Ambassador.
I do this beforehand.
I'm gonna let Prince continue the interview.
So now we pushing up now. So now in 2024, where we at now? There's been transitions. We know the Rabbi, he passed away 2014. I believe between 2003, 2005, Nasi, Prince Dr. Shaliah passed away. And then you had in 2022, Prince Ashriel, who we both were understudies of, he makes transition. So now we're in 2024. Where are we at now in Israel as it pertains to our lifestyle, and where are we heading in the future, so to say?
So like in every community, when you have giants like that who pass on from us, and are not with us in person to continue to guide and to direct us, following the guidance and the direction that they're receiving, from the spiritual elements. It's not an easy thing. It's not an easy thing. And especially people who were of their caliber, they're missing. They're missing, and they're very much needed. But at the same time, they left us with a lot. They left us with, like me and you, Mighty Hebrew. We are, the spiritual children of Prince Ashriel. So, that work has to continue through us because he gave us, personally, a lot of the tools, the knowledge and the understanding. And, when you read in the book of Daniel, that he said that here I've given you wisdom and understanding. Do what you got to do with that. Said, I'm asking you for some practical things that, how do I get from here to there? I'm giving you wisdom and understanding. Go forward with that. And so we receive the wisdom, the knowledge, and the understanding, and how to apply those things, in our real life experiences now. And so, of course, we continue to come up against things that we think, how would Prince Shaliah, Prince Ashriel, Ben Ami, and others, how would they, or what would they do in such a situation? How would they have acted? We are continuation of them. And so, our responsibility now as the next generation is to take up the mantle and to continue to work. They did all they were able to do in the period of time that they were able to do it while they were here with us physically. But I also believe, in in the spiritual continuation of those people, just in the embodiment of other people. And so, we are still, them, just in a different generation. And our responsibility now is that we have to, first of all, uphold what they managed to do, the work that they managed to put in for all of these years. We can't let that fall. We can't let all of the work that they put in be in vain, that we just give it all up afterwards. And so it's been, you have trial and error, you have trials and tribulations as you go along. And so where we are now is that we're in a period of reconstructing things, adjusting to the time that we're in right now, adjusting to us being without these giants who had led us as far as they led us, understanding who have the abilities now to be able to continue in the shoes of a lot of these other people. We're not going to have 1, 2, 3 people who are able to carry out the kind of work that they did. We may need 10 people that need to do what one of them were able to do. And so, the work is great, but the laborers are few. So, and that's like that, in every generation. You don't have a lot of people who are doing what needs to be done. You have, a selected few who have to take up, that responsibility and to run with it. And so where we are now is that the younger generation, we are now coming into ourselves. We're now coming into our own. We're now understanding, what our responsibility is and actually carrying that out. We're now trying to understand what is the best way for us to go forward so that we can be most effective and being able to, bring back some victories. We need to now, strengthen, the outreach programs that we had again. We need to strengthen the relationships that we had with governmental figures internationally. We have to put ourselves in position to be able to have these institutions that we have be able to sustain themselves, and we not come out of our pockets to do so. We need to take the ideas that we managed to develop over a 50-year period of time and actually begin implementing them, taking the idea of what a natural birthing center is, and then taking it and implementing that in other places in the world, using a lot of the knowledge, the wisdom, the keys, the tools that we've been given to actually be able to make a difference, not only in Israel, but worldwide, but starting right here in Israel. And so how do we go? What is the vision going forward? Well, the vision is that we take that vision of a community that is based on fundamental principles of truth, of love, of justice, of familyhood, of community, take that and make that something that we could implement in other places in the world. We managed to do it in Israel. We managed to create a community that is without crime. We managed to build a community that is self-sufficient. We managed to build our own school. We managed to build our own internal institutions. Now it's time for us to not only have built that and sustain it in Israel and in the community, but to actually now take that vision and take it outward, because our people need us wherever they are in the world. We just have to make sure that we are fully confident in what it is that we know, and just go and just do. I know sometimes people may be hesitant to actually go and to implement a lot of the things that we've implemented because we've been in a communal form for a long time. And so it's not easy for somebody to leave the community to go and to take these aspects of the community to other places in the world. But that's our charge now, Mighty Hebrew, to take these 50 plus years from 1968 up until this very point in time, to take all of the knowledge, all of the skills, all of the abilities, all of the fundamental principles, all of those things that make up the kingdom of God in Israel, or the village of peace in Israel in Dimona. Take those things now and expose them to the world, So I think that that's especially in the age of social media, where it's so easy to be able to get that information out there, to blast it, and just simple things that seem so simple to us. They're not simple in a lot of other places. It's not, it's not a regular thing to see 2, 3-year-old, 4-year-old children walking around outside at 8 o'clock at night, and their parents are nowhere in sight, but you know that your children are safe because there are other elders in the area who are going to watch over the children. That's not a regular thing for you to live in a community and no locks on the doors. You don't lock your door. That's not normal in other societies. For us, it's become normal because we managed to establish such a community. But it's not normal to be in a place where you feel that comfortable around your neighbors, that you can just go into somebody's house and just go into the refrigerator and take out whatever it is that you need and eat it. That's not normal. That if your parents are not around, then you can just go and take a quick nap in somebody else's house and you're not afraid. That's not these things have become normal for us because of the greatness of those giants that established that, and following the direction of the Holy Spirit and establishing this community by providence. But that's not a normal thing in the world. And so part of our responsibility is to take this normalcy that we have been accustomed to, and to allow people, for example, in the south side of Chicago, to be able to experience not having locks on your door and not being worried about a drive-by shootout, and not being taking the aspect of us working on preventative medicine and taking it to our brothers and sisters in America who suffer from some of the greatest chronic illnesses there are on this planet. Taking those things that we manage to, for us, it becomes usual, regular, having
And
doing
that's
those.
not to cut you off, but a quick question. We have what is known as, and because you brought up preventative health, we have what is known as the Rofim, that healers. Could you explain our healers in our community and what are their expertise, and are there achievements when it comes to healing our people when they're ill?
I think one of the greatest achievements that the ministers of health, because you have a health department, we have ministries in the community that are responsible for specific areas in the community. So you have a minister or ministry of health, you have a ministry of education, have a ministry of internal affairs, have a ministry of economics. So we have internal governmental ministries that operate as ministries to be able to ensure that the community itself operates as a proper unit. But now the Ministry of Health, they're responsible for the upkeep of the health of the community members. And so there are certain things that they have implemented to be able to maintain our health at A1 status. One of the things is that we have decreased the intake of salt by 50% almost by having no salt days, which means that every other day in the community is a day that we don't consume any salt. And so that has decreased our intake or our consumption of salt by 50%. Every quarter of the year, we have an entire week. That's a week called Raw Week, right? Where we don't cook any of the foods. So all of the foods are prepared in a live manner, and we're trying to actually move away from deep frying and from cooking the food, because obviously we know that the nutrients then are actually reduced in the foods once they cooked. So we have Raw Week once every quarter of the year. We have, after that, Sugarless Week, where we don't consume any sugar, any sweets, any sweeteners, anything like that for an entire week as well. We encourage every member of the community to at the least participate in some type of physical activity, right? 3 times a week up until you're sweating, to be able to make sure that we continue to to keep our pores open and to release a lot of those internal toxins. Obviously, the vegan diet. We have in the during the seasons change, we consume garlic and olive oil to be able to strengthen the immune system, and that's why, by the way, during COVID, because of how our immune system is, we didn't have people during at least the first 3 rounds of COVID who had contracted COVID, even though they were moving around just like everybody else. But because of that lifestyle, we've strengthened the immune system with intake of kelp and a lot of other things as well to continue to strengthen the immune system and to make sure that we have everything that we need. They put together a nutritional package for every member of the community that we should during the different seasons. This is the preferred diet during this period of time to make sure that you are in alignment with what it is that your body is in need of during this period of time. This is what they're responsible for. The delivery of babies, natural birth, looking out for the elderly. So they have programs or whatever to ensure that the elderly people, I mean, we have, people who are 105, 106, who, so 90 and plus, who continue to move around like nothing. We have programs internally that's called Life is Movement. So, every other day during the summer times, as many people as can come together to have some type of a workout session in the morning. All of these things are under the Ministry of Health. And they continue, like I say, push the preventative medicine aspect as opposed to needing to intake medicine. I mean, we're not naive to the fact that if there is something that you need external assistance, you need to be rushed to the hospital or whatever that is, then obviously that's what we'll do. But when that's not necessary, then the Ministry of Health, they're fully hands-on with the community to make sure that we are in alignment with what our bodies are calibrated and how our bodies are calibrated to operate. So that's just that ministry, and we can go into every one of the ministries and what they do, in order to sustain the community or whatever. But this time we don't have a lot of time for it. So you asked somebody you had to share.
I would just like to read a couple of articles about the community. And America Tonight CBS broadcast aired June 8th, 1994. They say they are among some of the best and brightest Black Americans who gave up their families and their country. Today, Ben Ami continues to reach out to the best and brightest of a new generation. Also, we have the U.S. sociologist Robert Merton in National Urban League State of the Race states this. He says, in the world of the sociologists, as in the more scheduled laboratories of the psychologists and the chemists, it says it is the successful experiment which is decisive and not the 1,001 failures which preceded it. More is learned from the single successes than from multiple failures. A single success proves it can be done. Thereafter, it is necessary only to learn what made it work. And then last one, it says, in the coming of age, the Jerusalem Repost, November 5th, 1992, states, at the very edge of the Negev town of Dimona, just before the desert begins, is the compound of the former Chicago-based Black Hebrew sect. Flower beds and vegetable gardens grow between rows of Troya-like houses. Boys play basketballs and girls jump rope. A father and a son play chess on a bench. The Hebrews believe they are descendants from the Israelites, who insist that Jewish history belongs to them, have fulfilled at least one Zionist idea. They have made their patch of the desert bloom. And we can also go to an island of sanity, the Black Hebrew community, and Dimona in the Hebrew and English, and it breaks the processes down that we had to endure from 1969 to the present day. Um, but the cut it short because I know time is very short. I need to ask you, what was your experience with Tiffany Hudson? How did she get the Dimona, if you don't mind me asking you that question? I gotta ask that. Like when I seen Tiffany Hudson over there in
Tiffany
Dimona,
Haddish.
yeah, Haddish, excuse me, Tiffany Haddish. I seen her over there in Dimona. Tell us about that. We want to hear it.
Sister Tiffany, her father is actually of Eritrean lineage. He's an Eritrean Jew, and she converted to Judaism a few years ago because the lineage, as I said, for Jews is your mother, according to the halacha, your mother should be a Jew. And so she was coming to Israel because she wanted to have, listening to everything that was being said on the media in regards to the war here in Israel. She wasn't satisfied with just looking at the news. She wanted to come here herself. And being an African American, the largest concentration of African Americans outside of America, any place in the world is right here in Israel. Being a Jew, obviously, the majority of the Jews in the world are right here in Israel. Being an Eritrean or Ethiopian Jew, or having a father who's Eritrean Ethiopian, the largest concentration of Ethiopian Jews are right here in Israel. So it all was just so perfect. And so when she did mention that she was coming to Israel to be able to see for herself on the grounds, we had people who were communicating with her, and I had the chance to be able to meet her, and we spoke. And we had shared with her information about the community and the importance of her being able to be exposed to her people since she's already here in the land. And so she was moving around to various communities or whatever. And I had the blessed opportunity to be able to move around with her in Jerusalem. And then also I did extend an invitation for her to come down to visit the community in Dimona, which she agreed to, and she did come, and we had a great time. And she wrote actually afterwards when she left, if that was the most significant part of her visit in Israel, coming down and experiencing the community. But it goes along with a long line of people who we had invited to come to Israel to see what your brothers and sisters are doing here in the land. So that goes along with Mama Winnie Mandela, who came to visit us in Israel. That goes along
That's why.
with our sister Whitney Houston and our brother Bobby Brown. That goes along with our brother Amari Stoudemire. That goes along with our brother Stevie Wonder. That goes along with Blair Underwood and Megan Good. That goes along with Martin Luther King III and the SCLC leadership under President Charles Steele. That goes along with all of these people who had Ray Charles, who had the blessed opportunity to come and to visit our community and to see what it is that we're doing, because we're not doing it for ourselves. We're doing it. We wanted to just check and see if this actually works. Can we be able to do something for ourselves and not be dependent on other people? We have to prove it. We wanted to get into the lab and be the ones that, there's that song, that I would have to be the one who say so until I try. So we buckled right up and we said, we're going on this journey to see if we could be able to do something for ourselves. And when we managed to do it for ourselves, we said, okay, well, let's take this information and share it with our people so that our people can know now that we've laid out the foundation based on how providence that led us. All you have to do is just follow the blueprint. We've already done it. It's possible. Here it is right here. Come see what we managed to do. Now let's take what we managed to do and let's implement that in other places in the world. So we were the ones who were just going as the vanguard for our people. But it wasn't never for us to just come and establish this and that's the end of the work. Absolutely not. And so yes, Tiffany Haddish, she goes along with a lot of other famous people who managed to come and to see and to experience firsthand what we're doing in Israel. And we welcome, all of our brothers to come and to see what we're doing. Even if you disagree with us, theologically, politically, spiritually, whatever it is. I disagree with a lot of, things that my biological brother and sister think. But what does that mean? So that means that we're not brother and sister anymore. That means that we can't work on the things that we do agree with. I beg to differ. So we have laid out the foundation, and now we can just pick up right from where we left off at. A lot of mistakes that we made, other people may not make. Also, we may be able to, or other people may be able to refine what it is that we managed to do, take it to another level. And so that's what we're actually looking at now. So that's part of the purpose going forward. It's a bit late here now, y'all. So I definitely got to be closing down. But I'll let you close it out, Mighty Hebrew. And then my sister, DJ, if you got anything you'd like to share.
Right. Sister DJ Genesis, you have any questions or comments before the ambassador leaves?
I would like to thank you. What has been accomplished is awesome. Shouts out to Brother Ben Amin for taking that step out of America into a foreign situation and going through all the troubles to keep that going, and all the people that came with him. He showed that it's capable of happening. So many groups try to start things, and they end up having nefarious kind of outcomes. I'm not sure if it's because of them as a whole, but I see the community in Israel is a real thing. And I see that what you guys have been doing for years and years is to be commended. And I hope that people get a chance to visit, if you can. If you are a Hebrew Israel, even you're a Christian, whatever, but take some time out and look into this community in Dimona. Go visit. I'm glad you brought up Tiffany Haddish because she got a lot of flack for going to Israel during this time. She got demonized, and when you really understand that, a lot of people get demonized by saying that they're Israelites. Certain like celebrities, when they actually embrace their Hebrew Israelite heritage, Nick Cannon, Kanye West, and then you had Kyrie Irving. You have so many people get demonized, and I'm not sure what we can do to be able to support people like that. The only thing is that I don't know if there is a connection between the Hebrew Israelites in America and the Hebrew Israelites in Dimona. If there is a oneness, because I believe that if we did have a unity amongst each other, then we'd be more powerful. And when we do get attacked and being told that we're anti-Semitic by saying that we're Israelites, we would not have a problem with legally, being able to fight that or to go against that. But I really appreciate your time on this channel. I'm happy to have opened this up to really show what the struggle that you guys have been through, and I really look forward to seeing how it grows, and how it begins to advance in the future. Thank you for being a part of Alchemizing Energy. Thank you
very much. We have Ambassador Ashriel Ben Yisra'EL, national spokesman for the Afro-Hebrew Israelites in Dimona, Israel, Northeastern Africa. We are honored, and it was definitely a pleasure of having you. Toda Rabbah, Adoni.
I want to thank you, Mighty Hebrew. I want to thank you, my sister. for allowing me to share these moments with you all on this alchemizing energy page, and allowing us to be able to share this information about our people here in Israel, about the struggles, but not only the struggles, to share also the accomplishments, to share what we've managed to do, and in the midst of everything that we've had to endure, we still managed to be able to build a community like this. And so hopefully and prayerfully, this won't be the last time that we're on here speaking to our people about this. And I'm hoping that the next time we get on, we'll be speaking about practical ways we could be able to help our brothers and our sisters, first of all, to get over here to visit the community and to experience it in real time, for real, but also how we could be able to take a lot of what we managed to do here and implement it in other places for the good and the betterment of our people wherever they are in the world. So I definitely appreciate you all for having me on here. And I want to say thank you and thank our viewing audience for, for staying on with us 2.5 hours. It's not a little bit of time, but I'm hoping that we manage to get in as much as possible within this period of time. And if not, we'll be back. That's not a problem at all.
Absolutely. Thank you very much for showing up. It's definitely an honor, Ambassador. Hallelujah. Prince Charlene Dean, the mighty Hebrew. DJ Genesis, take us out.
Alchemize your energy. Darling, let your spirit be free. Don't give up. Keep on pushing through. Now is the time. It's all up to you. Alchemize your energy, my friend. Let your spirit be free. Don't give up. Keep on pushing through. Now is the time. It's all up to you. No matter the storm, but over tragedy. No matter the storm, but over tragedy. No matter the storm, we will always take flight. Keep on pushing through the darkness of night. There's no limit, let's reach for the sky. Shine so bright, from darkness to light.